let's just do some exploration here, figure out if there's a problem worth solving. And if there is a problem worth solving, then I can share with you a little bit how we solve it. Otherwise, I wish you the best. You're a busy person. I'm a busy person.
You had a vendor show up to your property today and paint a unit, and the individual who came and painted your unit did just a bad job. I mean, 100% of the time, and I guarantee a lot of people are thinking the same thing right now. They're going to say, "Oh, I'd fire him."
So you cannot be friends when you're on the site, period. You have to hold these people super accountable. I don't care if this is your best friends. I've had vendors where I have went to their house, had dinner, and then the next day I'm like, hey, y'all got to come back. This is not okay.
Being nice can actually damage the productivity of the relationship. But if we hear directly what you're looking to solve for,
So, vendor accountability. Tim, would you like to kick it off? Or I'd like to hear your thoughts on vendor accountability.
Sure. Thank you, Adrian. I appreciate it. Vendor accountability is a challenge. And, with the site teams and us as higher level, I think there's a layer of being taken advantage of by suppliers because they tell us one thing and then they provide services in another manner. I recently had a supplier that has been struggling to get my business for a couple of years, and I finally gave them a shot. And they were doing some unit renovations, and their scope of work was full paints and then cleaning the entire unit. And they literally told me that it was my responsibility or my team's responsibility to do the cleaning, like touch ups, put the cherry on top of the sundae. And I'm looking at him going, I'm paying you for a service. I expected when I walk it to do the punch walk for it to be 100%. Now, 5, 7, 8 days later, no, I'm not going to call you back for a go back and cleaning because I can't control who's got into that unit. But for him to tell me that it was me and my team's responsibility to really, finish up the cleaning process of that unit, was I was taken back. And it's going to make me really pause to give that supplier any more work because no, it's not my job. You're supposed to deliver me a product that is 100% completed. Now, if we haven't explained the scope of work properly and there's things of that nature, then that's one thing. But especially on the cleaning, you clean it from top to bottom. The ceiling fan needs to be cleaned, the cupboards need to clean up, the drawers need to clean up. That's what we're paying you to do. So holding them accountable is sometimes letting them go where we're just not a good fit because your expectations and my expectations are two different expectations. So it's really about blending that and coming up with a common ground of what we can expect. And from the very beginning, and I was very clear about what my expectations were, and they didn't follow through. So sometimes accountability is just letting that supplier go and learn some lessons and then potentially coming back.
A few questions. Obviously, I have a ton of questions in mind, but let's just start with a couple here. So, how do you like, besides just word of mouth, and obviously, I know you have a very generous Rolodex, right? Being around the block for a long time. So, beyond that, beyond like Compliance Depot or whatever company your company is using for compliance, right? For vendor compliance. So beyond that, beyond word of mouth and your Rolodex, are there any other ways in which you're refreshing, like you're bringing in fresh blood when it comes to vendors?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm very fortunate here in Denver where my competitive property management companies and I have great relationships. And we're always talking about suppliers that can help us out and who's doing good and who's not. So we have a very vast network of people that hey, have you used this person? Have you used that person? What was your experience? And, we all want to deliver the best product. So we're checking references, we're verifying that they're doing what they're doing because everybody's got the shiny new object and the shiny new thing. Is that shiny new object actually working?
Now, when it comes to sales pitch, the way generally vendors introduce themselves to you, and I'm sure that everybody starts like, we're the greatest and the best. You should be working with us because there's no one better than us. Like, what do you see generally, like some things that are kind of like a pattern in the way they present themselves to you? I'm only asking this because there's a lot of like service providers out there that are watching this content, and I think it's very helpful for them to kind of like understand how Tim and others like you are looking at a new vendor coming in, right? So what do you see some patterns of, like, the way they present themselves, and what are some areas of improvement for them?
Well, they have to be patient. Because we're gonna do our homework, and if they're too overzealous and if they're too pushy, that's going to be a turn up, and we're not going to use them. They've got to be patient, and understand that when we're doing our homework to find out about them, that we're going to ask the tough questions. A hard sales pitch is not going to get me to sign on the dotted line. I need to see some proof. I need to see some information that you're proving the concept, so to speak, and understanding that. And are you part of my network? Who else do you work at with my network? If you don't work for any of my competitive property management companies, it's going to be a struggle for me to give you a shot because you haven't proven yourself. Now, that's not mean to say that if I know somebody and they change jobs to go to a different company that they don't work for, and again, it's about the relationship. We all are going to have things that failed. And whether it's my team that fails or the supplier that fails, it's the relationship at the end of the day that's going to balance that and bridge that gap so that we can figure out where the failure occurred and set everybody up for success after that first failure.
I think I want to stay on this topic a little more, because at the end of the day, I think we as an industry, our side of the business, we're very siloed, right? Vendors on one side, believe that they should be pitching or they should be handling the relationship in certain way, while we have our own expectations, and maybe they have to hear from, like, more of us around the table, like what the expectations are. I think that might help. Like, everything starts with a dialogue. And with this being said, I brought someone here as an expert that's not an operator, but it's a service provider, and a good friend of mine, I will say, right? Guillermo. Guillermo, I want you to introduce yourself to the group. Tell us a little bit about what you do, and then I have the first question for you. That question would be, how do you manage your relationship from a service provider perspective with property management companies?
Sure. Thanks, Adrian. Appreciate the introduction. I've met many of you on the call already. This is wonderful to be invited to the conversation here. Appreciate you including me. So my background, I started my career in maintenance and operations in industry, not property management. Tim, to your point. So a lot of things that are field service related and centralizing maintenance and operations. And so we had mandates regarding to safety, delivery, procurement, production, revenue, things that we're all kind of used to today in this world. And that was kind of what we fixed. And so that just want to get an introduction of what we do. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of Iris CX. We help solve the triage or the demand side of maintenance. So knowing what, we call it know before you go. So being able to take a look at the problem before you roll that truck, before you send that crew, so you have clarity around the problem that you're solving, so you can kind of do things a little bit faster. In addition, just makes things easier given the languages, given the lack of explanations that are given, and so on. So I'll just leave that there as an introduction and a frame as to why I'm even invited. To your question, Adrian, how do we talk to service providers? So one of the things that I learned a few years back ago is like if we walk in and as service providers with all the answers, like we're basically an arrogant pain in the ass. And so one of the things that I really try and focus on is understanding the objective of the people I'm talking to and really do whatever I possibly can to be on the same side of the table as they are. So even coming down to the language that I use, like I would like to understand your goals and seek to help you achieve those goals, or understand what's blocking those goals from happening. And of course, many times in maintenance, it's because I don't know what's going on, and so things are coming out of hand, et cetera. And so we focus on that. So with respect to the questions that we ask and the conversations, we really want, to Tim's point, to approach the conversation as a collaborator. And I know that sounds like it sounds wordsmithy, but like we really want to say, hey, what are you trying to get to? How can we get you there? And I think one of the things that we teach our team, and I really try and focus on, is if we're not a good fit, we're grateful for the conversation and happy to pass you on to somebody that we might know that can help you out. Because in many cases, we're not a good fit. And so we even frame that first conversation as, let's just do some exploration here, figure out if there's a problem worth solving. And if there is a problem worth solving, then I can share with you a little bit how we solve it. Otherwise, I wish you the best. You're a busy person. I'm a busy person. We've got a lot of things to solve in our day to day. Who can I introduce you to and how can I help? So I hope that answers the question, Adrian, or at least reflects what you're saying. And Tim, you had conversations. I hope that's how we approach the engagement. It's just like, how can I help?
100%. 100%. It's collaboration and working through the things rather than selling me a widget.
What a novel concept, a discovery call with your potential client, right?
And even we can go just explore. Like discovery even feels like I've got to get something out of you. Let's take a walk in the dark for 15 minutes and figure out if there's a problem we're solving.
Uh, Thank you, G. Welcome to the group. And for all of you, really, there's a couple of ways in which you could intervene. The best way, when you want to like ask a question or make a comment or like do a follow up, just use that hand raise feature on the screen. I'm looking at everyone. When there's a hand that's being raised on the screen, I want to make sure that you're gonna be next in line. Obviously, first come, first serve here. And with that being said, if there's any questions to what Tim or Guillermo said so far, feel free to at any given point, raise your hand. There's no other way, right? Other being in a virtual space to see you, other than using that hand raising feature. So you could be the next, the next to have something to say. I want to go now to Oscar, and Oscar, welcome back. You being an owner, an operator, you also being like on the operation side as a maintenance. You started from the ground up. Tell me about the relationship with the vendors. Like what are the things that you value in a vendor operator relationship? How do you vet your vendors? What are some ways to vet your vendors that you want to share with the group?
I think it goes back to having a relationship with them for a long time. Some of the vendors that I have, I know them since I started in maintenance back in the day 25 years ago. So that's kind of, I kept that relationship since I'm involved with IREM, being involved with the, with the industry partners, which is the vendors that are involved, working with my colleagues. So that's how we have kept that relationship going on. But in my end too, what I do, I try to do an annual, sort of like an annual gathering with other vendors, especially either at the end of the year or at the beginning of the year as a thank you. Bring my maintenance people. I do some trainings in my end as to what do I expect from my vendors to do. And like a PowerPoint presentation, all of those things that I look up to. The number one thing is to be a professional. Obviously, if I need them to be contractors, license, working insurance, all of those things, all the paper that we have to do. Then after that, the expectations, exactly like you mentioned, communication going back and forth. I also want to be prepared in case of an emergency. I want to have 2 or 3 people from within the same, plumbing, for example, whatever, especially let's say emergencies, hopefully not, but let's say you have a crime in one of your properties. Do you have somebody who specializes with blood? All of those things, the special companies for that. So you want to be able to have emergency people out there that you need at least 3 people on that. So that's a relationship that you create on the long term. But like I said, for them to know what they expect from you, how to talk to tenants. Don't say too much. Because the tenants can be very selective in what they hear. And if a vendor or one of their employees goes and talks too much or says too much of the information that needs to be only exclusive between us and them, that's part of the ongoing thing that I need to do. So like I said, it's just creating a communication going back and forth because that's going to save a lot of headaches. What do I expect from my maintenance people? What do I expect from my on-site managers? And how is it related to the vendors? We all have the same common responsibility to work together. By the way, everybody needs to know their expectations, and there needs to be a protocol. How do you handle all of this? So, like I said, vendors are your friends. Like we have spoken in the past, and maintenance and the pandemic, who were the most essential workers? Our maintenance workers and our vendors, right? So they are extremely important in what we do when it comes to real estate management. They just need, and I think we're part of this group for that reason, is they need to get the proper credit that they deserve and the importance that they are. But it's an ongoing communication, keeping with the trends of what's going on. All of that is an ongoing relationship that you must keep with your vendors moving at all times, and creating relationships, getting to know them, and the expectations, communication between the entire team. And like I said, with me, I do a training yearly. Things that are coming up, that are happening, what do I expect? Anything that comes out, I share it with them, with our maintenance crew, to make sure that together we're able to get things done. And also, remember, they're also our eyes and ears. They're an extension of us. They may see things there that, they just let us know and we can address, things that are happening, things of that nature in the buildings, maybe drugs, whatever. They don't need to be exposed. They just let us know and we kind of make it seem like we show up and do the work and catch the issue. So things like that. And also let them know about for example, the technology out there that can help them. Like I said, it goes back and forth. It's a communication between both sides.
Those are great points, Oscar. I want to do this next. Not everybody is, high level overseeing portfolios and everything. So the next person that I want to bring on to just kind of share their experience would be Jason Simpson. But Jason, before we go to you, I want to acknowledge a couple of folks that are probably new on the call, or fairly new, where they never really spoke. And then don't feel obligated. I'd like for you to introduce yourself after Jason speaks really quickly. And if you have something to say on a topic, feel free to say, but don't feel obligated to say anything. So we have Graham. Welcome, Graham. We also have we also have Wes, and there's someone else, Vinny. Vinny has been on the calls, but I don't remember exactly if he had opportunity to speak or not on any of our meetings yet. But you're welcome to just kind of say a few words after that. And we also have Richard Porter. Richard, if you're in a position to turn the camera on, say a few words, great. If not, same, great. We respect that. We're happy you're on a call. So back to you, Jason. What's your take on building, like how do you recruit great vendors from a site perspective, from a service manager perspective?
So the biggest asset to me personally, and I'm a big association guy, but that seems to be the easiest way to network and build a vendor relationship. But once you have that relationship built, it gets really easy to be friends with them. So you cannot be friends when you're on the site, period. You have to hold these people super accountable. I don't care if this is your best friends. I've had vendors where I have went to their house, had dinner, and then the next day I'm like, hey, y'all got to come back. This is not okay. You cannot let anything slip by even once, or that kind of builds a culture of like, well, it's not a big deal. He'll let it slide here, and then it gets worse and worse over time. So you really, and here's the thing too, is I'm a vendor as well, so I get it from both sides. But you have to hold people accountable. If you have especially with a newer relationship, you need to be walking every piece of work they do. Period. There is no okay. It's good enough for me. We'll send somebody to go live in there. No, you have to walk everything. Especially when it comes to painting and stuff like that, make readies. You just have to hold them very accountable and have to remember that while you can be friendly with them, that you are not friends. So this is a business transaction, and that has to stay that way. You are there to uphold your owner's assets and integrity. You are not there to make friends and hang out. And it is another thing too, is you really, really have to be careful being friends with vendors, is because I've been offered at least 5 separate times kickbacks, and each time you have to shut that stuff down. And that's really important for on-site level staff too, is the opportunity for kickbacks is always present, and you have to have a really strong moral integrity and turn that stuff down and report that immediately.
Great insight out there. How can someone brand new that you never used before, never heard of before, can impress you and make you say, hey, I'm going to give these guys a shot. I want to see what they're about.
I'm going to ask for portfolio information. I need to see. I want some photos. Give me a reference. Give me something. I'm not going to trust somebody with a $5,000 project just off of he says he can do it. Period. I mean, it's not my money, but I'm supposed to spend it like it's my money. I need to see some kind of proof of work. I need to see where you've been. You tell me you did this over at this property, great. I got time. I got a lunch. I'm going to go drive over there and check it out. I want to see how your landscaping looks over there. I want to see the kind of work that y'all do.
Got you. Graham, welcome, sir. Introduce yourself to the group really quick. And if you have any thoughts on selecting the best vendors, share with us what your system is.
Hi, I'm Graham Seacrest. I'm in Richmond, Virginia, Director of Maintenance for Monroe Properties. We've got about 1,000 units, 1,000 doors here in the city of all types, multifamily buildings, single family, you name it. Vendor-wise, finding new vendors, pick them up, and I put them through trial by fire, and I see if they've got it, and I check their work and make sure that they are doing what they're supposed to do, cleaning, painting, doing anything that's needed, plumbing, and it's really trial by fire. and I'm going to hound them. I'm going to watch them and make sure they're getting done what's required. We're turning so many units this time of year that, my staff will come behind, and I get it. We have showings and things, so we do have the sparkle buckets that the rental team will take and clean a little bit behind themselves, behind the people who are walking it. But I do expect my cleaners to come back, and I'll call them in a heartbeat and tell them to come right back. Same with the painters. Again, I agree you can't be necessarily friends with them all, because at the end of the day, this is business, and we've got to knock this job out and get it done and move these people in, which is how we're making our income. So getting good references from the vendors is very important. But again, I'm trial by fire. I'm going to put them to work. I'm going to see what they can do, and I want to see their hands on it. They are not going to get a $5,000 project right off the bat. That's for sure. They're going to get the small potatoes in and work themselves up. So that's about all I've got. Thank you.
Welcome. I'm glad you're here. Vinny, you're up next, sir.
How you doing, Adrian? It's been a while. So, my name is Vinny Bertone. I work for Bozzuto now. I used to work for a smaller company called EOS, Titan Corp. To get vendors for us was kind of like, I understand you have to build relationships, but sometimes it doesn't go, because we were a value add company, the company I worked for prior. So you're in like a new market all the time. Like I started in New York. We were headquartered in Atlanta. Then I would be out in Denver or out in Chicago or in Dallas or in Houston. I don't have any access to vendors. My easiest way to find them was to go through my reps, for whether it be HD Supply, Chadwell, Lowe's Pro, or whomever you use, Ferguson. They're a pretty valuable asset because they get to see all these properties, and they get to see a lot of these contractors, the work that they do. So coming preferred from them in the beginning, and then you get to build a relationship from there. And then it's always, how well they get the job done. Obviously, price is a part of it always. And then, what they can do for you when you really need them. Do they come through for you or not? And, you'll learn that pretty quickly. A lot of people put their best foot forward in every business that you're in. You have to learn how to find out who's the fake and who's the phony at some point, because there are some out there that are like that, and you'll learn as you go through it, as I have. But you build a relationship. Like I said, it has to be built on trust. And I'm a straight shooter. I tell them right from the start, look, I'm not patting myself on the back, but I'm very good at organizing my turns. Every part of it is scheduled out. There's going to be times when there's going to be something, the office comes and says, hey, this person wants to move in 4 days early or whatever it is. And I'm going to have to call that vendor and say, hey, look, and I pull that card. I don't use it often, but I do. I say, look, I never really have to ask, but now I'm asking. And that happens maybe 3 or 4 times a year for me. But that's just a part of being organized and how you schedule your turns out and everything else that you have going on, even bigger projects. Because I had been with Titan Corp prior. I started as a groundskeeper, went on up to the regional for maintenance, regional construction. And so I've been through lots of parts of the business, and I've been now on every part of this business as far as garden style. Now I'm in SFRs. So it's a roller coaster trying to find the right vendor. It really takes time. So, depending on where you are in the business, you either have that time or you're not. And nowadays, the time is so limited because the staffing is short. So your time is more valuable than ever, the time you're spending with these vendors. So make it important. And yeah, you can build a relationship and be friendly with them. Like everybody's saying the same thing. I agree with everything that you're saying. You just don't take it too far, because people will take advantage of the situation when they can too. Certain people will. And that's about it.
Thank you, Vinny. Also, I want to make a point. Everything's money, right? Translates into money. Someone messes up, it's money. Your make ready date gets pushed out, it's money. Everything translates into money. So ultimately, it's not just about the time, but we know that saying, time is money, right? So I'm gonna go now to Wes. Wes, welcome. Introduce yourself to the group really quick and share some thoughts with us here.
Yeah, I'm Wes Perry. I'm the Director of Facilities for GMH Communities. We've got 22 some odd properties scattered across the country, primarily student housing, a handful of multifamily as well. I have been fortunate in the short time I've been in this role, because I came over from resorts. All of my contractor relations were like local, because the resort is static. I went to NAA my first year with GMH, and just started rolling through and interviewing GCs and guys that had a larger footprint. And from that have built some relationships with some different people that they're actually teamwork type relationships in the sense that if like we're in the process of purchasing a couple properties in two completely different markets, if that's a market that they don't work in, they won't hesitate to give me a recommendation for somebody they know in that market. I've developed some relationships with the Connect companies. There's Air Connect and Roof Connect and Pave Connect. They're all part of a larger kind of umbrella, almost like I'm not speaking to their structure, but it's almost like a co-op type thing, and they kind of manage. They will also give me recommendations for new markets. So I rely on those recommendations a lot, but I also just rely on my own knowledge when I ask a contractor to look at a job and give me a proposal. When I look over the proposal, how thorough is it? Is he just parroting what I said and then giving me a price, or is he giving me, or she for that matter, giving me that breakdown that I want to see as to what they saw is needed to be done at that property? Because I can't be at all the properties all the time. So a lot of times I'm making an introduction to the GM at that property with this contractor, and they're visiting the site based on the narrative I've given them, but I'm relying on their eyes to look at what I'm asking them to give me a proposal on, and give me that feedback that, hey, you didn't mention this, but we noticed this. Those kind of things. Are they giving me that full picture that I know that they're not just lip servicing it and giving me a number that they're hoping I'll sign off on? They're actually doing that research. And it becomes very obvious when I ask two or three to look at the same job, and I've got one that's got a 2-3 page proposal that really spells it all out, and I got another one that's basically a paragraph with a number attached to it. That helps me a great deal. Because we are as spread out as we are as well. I rely, on the knowledge of my maintenance staff at the different facilities and kind of what their gut feeling is after contractors come to visit. A number of my maintenance supervisors have been doing this for quite a while, and they're very knowledgeable as to what their building needs. And so, if they call me up and say, "Hey, this guy from so and so came out yesterday and he's an idiot," that's going to carry a lot of weight with me. I'm probably going to look a lot harder at them. And then finally, it really helps me is I published, I can't remember the exact number, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to 50 SOPs for facilities that covers everything from coil cleaning to preventive maintenance to lockout, tagout, etc. And publish them to all the properties. And we hold regular audits on how they're using the SOPs and the rest. And what that does is it creates, or at least attempts to create, a consistency across the properties with how they deal with all the things they need to deal with. And that really helps from my view. When I go to a property, if something's off, it's you can notice it quicker, because they should all be relatively within the bounds of the the different equipment that you'll have at different properties be doing the same thing, so to speak, because they should all be following the SOPs. So you see quickly if something's out of the norm, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Wes. I see that we have Ryan Berger just join us. Ryan, hello. If you can be on a camera, we understand. Uh, no problem. But if you can turn the camera on and say a few words, just drop a line in the comments so I'll know to take you next. The same thing for Richard Porter. We see that you're here. The same thing for Ed Ware. Ed, you've been around for a minute. If you're in a position to turn the camera on and say a few things at some point, I see that you came back on. Before, and also we have Noah, which is not, he's been around for a minute, and Scott Peters, that would like to hear what they have to say. I see that Ryan is back on camera. So we're gonna go with Ryan. Then we have a message from Guillermo. Guillermo, I want to give you the opportunity to have the floor versus me reading your message, as maybe not everyone has the opportunity to keep up with the chat box. So Ryan, you go first, and Guillermo, you're up next.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is my first time here joining. Adrian, I know you just invited me the other day, so sorry I'm a little late to this one, but glad to be here and learn and share things with everyone.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit about what you do currently, and if you have any thoughts about what are the best ways to choose great vendors.
Yeah, I'm the head of CapEx and facilities for 29th Street Capital out of Chicago. So I oversee all of our construction and facilities throughout the country, pretty much a national portfolio. I've been here for about a year and have been in multifamily for the last 9 or 10 years. And what was your question about selecting good vendors?
Yeah. What are your top tricks, top ways to share with the group?
Yeah. I mean, over the years I've been able to build out a good network throughout the country, but I always find it interesting and challenging going into new markets, which always happen with acquisitions, things like that. So I found my trick, which I'm sure many people do, is ask for referrals. If I don't know someone in a market, one of my vendors that I trust knows someone, another management company knows someone, someone from a group like this knows someone. So I'd rather do that and kind of always direct my teams to try to find someone through someone else versus going on Google and looking up a roofer or something. That usually doesn't go in the right direction. So that's the route I usually go, is find referrals. I always say it's a small, huge industry. It's huge. Obviously, there's tons of people, tons of properties, all that, but it's small in that Adrian, as an example, I think I ran into you when you were with RPM a few years ago, and now we're running into each other again. And I'm sure there's other people here as well that you meet a lot of people and you lose track of them, and then you run into them years later in some completely different place in some completely different capacity. So one way or another, we probably all know each other.
Absolutely. And it's great to have you here with us, Ryan. And also I want to say this as an open invite. If you gentlemen, at any given point, look for any type of connections in any particular market. The purpose of having, 200 plus members here and growing is to kind of share resources as well, right? Not just knowledge, but our own resources. So feel free to shoot me a message. I could send a group email to someone, and this could go to 200 plus people, and they could quickly help, right? In case that you're in a situation where you're looking for, for some resource of any kind, new market, or, you're in an existing market, and what you have does not, work out for you. Guillermo, back to you.
Hey, Adrian, just this is kind of the conversation of how we interact. I mean, lots of actually thoughts that come up from the conversation so far. I think the one thing that I'd like to ask us from the buyers, the customers who are out there, is that you give us the no fast and the no and the why. A lot of times it's not right now, but that's also important to understand why not right now and to hear your other priorities. Because here's kind of how otherwise what we don't know is we don't know why. And we were coin operated to some degree, and so we're going to keep bugging you a little bit, now and then, or at least trying to provide value. But if you can give us the no's early and fast, then we can stop guessing. And if we can stop guessing, we can start angling on how we provide value. So that's kind of one ask there. And I think that there is some sort of how we kind of opened the conversation after I spoke around the relationship between there's got to be a little bit of tension. I like this conversation around friendly. You can be friendly but not friends, or you can be friends, but as long as you understand that there needs to be a tension in place. We talked about that a little bit today. And that tension is so valuable. and that we hear the problems that you're seeking to solve, even if it's not the problems that we solve. And then we are able to kind of like double click on that. And then it's kind of our job as vendors to bring innovations because it's not, that's just what we're supposed to do. So the relationship is there's a symbiosis, there's like a yin and a yang to it all. We're like, we got to hear the no's. We're going to keep offering and asking and getting clarity around what you're trying to achieve. But like, being nice can actually damage the productivity of the relationship. But if we hear directly what you're looking to solve for and we hear the no's and the whys, that can really be valuable. So I realize it might sound counterintuitive, but as vendors, we do want to hear no and why. We want to hear it fast.
Yeah, I love that you're pointing this out because it's very important. There's so many operators. Well, most of us want to call here, operators. So that was very valuable, very well pointed out. So thank you for sharing that. Richard,
Good morning.
good morning.
I'm Richard Porter. I just took a new position working for a company in charge of 11 properties all over the state of Oregon. Vendor wise, when I'm looking for a new vendor, I definitely go with Lowe's, Home Depot recommendations if I'm new to that particular area. I also check with my maintenance teams for their recommendations on vendors they've worked with in the past. I have a little bit different approach though. When I call in vendors for a project, I have them all show up at the same time to give the estimates and go over the project. That way they all know who they're competing against. That works out rather well. They try to be extra detailed when they see who they're up against.
So transparency.
Yes, very much transparency. I want everybody to know who they're up against when they're bidding on a job for me.
That's great. That's a great one. That's a very good angle. Well, I'm glad you're here. Richard, this is your first time today?
Second time.
Second time. Well, I hope you'll find the time to come back, and I hope you're finding these conversations useful. Now,
Very much so.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks to all of you really for being here. So now back to I will say old timers, and that doesn't describe the age, right? So Scott Peters, you're up next, sir. Any thoughts on selecting great ways to find some really solid vendors for you that you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, to Richard's point, I mean, I do that too. I group vendors and bring them in to bid because we're all pressed for time. So that's a good way to breed competition, get a great number. And then the biggest thing about that is when you're out there, and I'd love to tell you I know everything, but I don't. And the vendors can lean in and say, hey, maybe you don't want to do that. And you can have a group discussion right there and really refine your scope when you're bidding a job, especially a larger job, right then and there, without having to go back and forth between 3-4 different vendors and yourself. You can all define that scope right then and there, and then everybody's bidding apples for sure. At that point, vendors, we use the term, industry partners, because without vendors, we're not going to survive. There's not one multifamily company out there that's not going to survive without a good base of industry partners out there. I hear a lot of good ideas and everybody building that relationship and having a great relationship, and we do the same thing, right? Great relationships with vendors. I could tell you about 4 or 5 vendors that I've known who have, not to date myself too much, started their business and they've already retired and they've done business with us the entire time. Right. The one thing about, our vendors that we need to be aware of when you're looking for a new one is, do they understand the multifamily industry? And that's a big one. Because if they're coming out of doing insurance work or things like that, they're not probably going to fit the mold, right? If you're not looking for an insurance job, they're probably not going to fit the mold for our pricing stature, level for what we're looking for in the multifamily industry. So that's one. And then, when I would find a new vendor, if I need to find a new vendor, before I would put them out to my properties and put them out to everybody, I would always try to see if I could find a project for them to work with me on directly, and give them that project, and then see how they do on a few projects for me specifically, And that way, if there's good communication and they show up when they're supposed to and they do the work that they're supposed to do, great. Now I can start peeling you out there to the rest of the properties. But if they can't communicate with me and they can't get back to me on things and aren't showing up for me under a specific contract, under a specific job, then I'm probably not going to put you out to the rest of my properties. So I try to utilize them individually before I put them out. And if I don't have a project for them, I'll work directly with one of our maintenance supervisors on site and say, hey, do me a favor, let's try this vendor out and tell me how they do for you before I put them out to everybody and say, hey, let's start using, these guys. We use a lot of contracts. We have, for the work that we're doing, if we're doing an interior renovation, they're going to be under a contract. If they're doing work for us, as large projects, they're going to be under a contract. And when it comes to the sites for, say, your cleaning or your interior paint, there's no specific contract that we use, but we use a cleaning or a painting guideline that we have them sign. And then that way they've signed that guideline and they know, I think either Tim or Oscar speaking earlier, and holding them accountable for what they're supposed to do. If you give them that guideline, and it's not a contract, it's just a guideline. Say, here, if you're going to do work on my sites, sign this, read it, make sure you understand it, because when we come back and we walk and we find discrepancies, you're going to have to come fix them according to that guideline that you signed. And it's a very easy process, and the properties can do it themselves out there when they bring in a new vendor. And then the other thing is we lock our vendor list down, so you can't just be, Joe's painting and walk onto one of our properties and start doing work. So you have to be vetted by one of our regional team members before you can even start doing work for us.
Scott, I'm curious, what do you think about the existence of a vendor directory that actually has ratings for the vendors, to where your managers, your service managers, everybody in your company that uses a certain vendor has a way like Google ratings, right? But just something that's like industry specific, to where be able to like rate them. And by the way, this is a question for you all. We might, I guess, not be able to like hear from every one of you, but if you want to type in your answers, what do you think about a directory or an app or something like a Google review type service that will be just focused on multifamily, to hear just from managers and people that actually have used a certain vendor in multifamily, if you'll find that useful. So Scott?
Yeah, again, not trying to age myself here, but before Google was a thing and Google ratings were a thing, I used to do that. I'd send out a report card kind of to all my properties and ask, how are the vendors performing? And for each one, how are they performing for you? And I kind of went away from that a little bit, because it's funny that, you can have one property that absolutely loves this vendor, and then another property is like, why do we even do business with this vendor? And it doesn't mean that they're a bad vendor. It just means that maybe they had a bad experience with a vendor, and then that leaves a real bad taste in somebody's mouth, and then they give them a bad rating no matter what, and they can't catch back up. As human beings, we're not very forgiving. If somebody does great for us, we don't say too much, but if they do something bad, everybody's going to know. So I went away from that a little bit because it was a little toxic, to tell you the truth. And it's, I do some classes, and it's one thing I teach like about vendors, and I'll ask a question. It's more of a trick question. You had a vendor show up to your property today and paint a unit, and the individual who came and painted your unit did just a bad job. What would you do? And 100% of the time, and I guarantee a lot of people are thinking the same thing right now, they're going to say, oh, I'd fire him. Right, I'd fire that vendor. But the problem with that is that individual who showed up can work for multiple companies, because most of it's piece, and they could show up for the next vendor who you call in too. So it's really working with your vendors and not just firing them because they had one bad performance, but working with them to set the standards and what you're looking for on each individual property. And just to fire them, it's if keep your hands down if you don't. But if you've ever made a mistake at work, raise your hand. I mean, every day. right? So, we make mistakes. And if my company were holding me to standard as most of our property managers and maintenance supervisors are going to hold our vendors to, as far as just firing them when they've made a mistake, then we all would probably be jobless and be looking for work. So
Great point, Scott. Thank you for pointing out. Ed, are you on? You're available for saying a few words to share a few thoughts? We're going to Noah for right now. Ed, if you're gonna be available in a few minutes after Noah is done, then you'll have the floor.
All right, well, yeah, I'll go real quick. For those of you I have not met yet, I'm Noah Rabin. I'm the Director of Maintenance for Procurement and Risk Management for TM Associates. We do multifamily affordable housing up and down the East Coast and into the Midwest. And vendor accountability, that's one of my bigger topics. When I joined the company 7 years ago, we were much smaller and had a much smaller footprint. So at the time when I was starting, I relied a lot on the connections that we had made as a company before I joined. Relied a lot on our maintenance staff and our regional managers and their experiences with the vendors to get feedback. But as we've continued to grow, I've seen an issue where the standard of expectations has not been consistent across the board for our properties. We're in 17 states, and finding vendors that have consistent standards of care across even just a couple of states can be a challenge. So my focus has really been on recently finding larger vendors that can help out our properties. But I also, a lot of what I have to look at for that is their reach. How well can they get to the properties? And then, if they can get to the properties, how quickly are they responding and how are they interacting with our site staff? I'm not in the business of kicking vendors off site right away because I got a bad review from a manager. But at the same time, if I do hear from a manager or maintenance person that we have a vendor that's not meeting our expectations, I want to give them the opportunity to correct it. And depending on how they respond to that is really what determines whether or not we're going to keep working with them moving forward. I really believe in giving people second chances. And, we've done that a few times and it's come back to really work out in the long run with some of our vendors where we didn't have a great experience to start out, but we let them know what our concerns were and they addressed them immediately and still all worked out really well in the long run. So, I've really found that keeping an open line of communication with our vendors has been the most important part in getting that level of service that we're expecting and that we want to see across the board. So, I'm still really involved with talking to our vendors as much as I'd like other people to be doing it these days, because I've got a lot of other things to look at. When there's an issue with one of our vendors or one of our consultants for our various service contracts, I'm usually the one that anybody in our company comes to, and I'm usually making a phone call to see what's going on, get the other side of the story, and then get them to make the correction. Most of the time, I've found that when we are offering to give our business, as much of our business as we can to vendors, they are really happy to come back and make those corrections without much complaining. Granted, you still get those folks and those small contractors in the middle of nowhere that will say, oh, no, that wasn't part of my warranty, and we have to fight with them to get them to come back and fix it. But I've really found that just, again, keeping that open line of communication with our vendors has been huge. And when I have a single person that I can call, especially for a larger company that can cover a really large area of the country, it has been such a great thing to have a single person to call and just say, hey, that project we got going over there in Ohio, hey, I just heard they really dropped the ball. They left a mess in the apartment. I need you to get somebody out there as soon as possible to correct it. And most of the time it's all right, we're on it and it's not going to happen again. And for the most part, what we've seen is that's actually usually holds up. In terms of the smaller vendors, though, that's where I really struggle to hold people accountable, because I can tell a manager or a regional, hey, I wasn't happy with what I saw. We should really stop using them. But when we're in 17 states and we have 458 properties that we have to keep track of. Some things slip through the cracks here and there. I've put out there a few different companies that I'd prefer we don't work with. And, mostly companies that handle restoration work. I'm not going to shame anybody, but there's some companies out there that will take advantage of some of our managers. And, our insurance brokers have even told us we don't want to see those guys anymore. So even though I put that message out, it still gets through, it still works its way through the screen sometimes. And we will find out about a property that really needs to get things corrected, and sometimes we just have to kick those vendors off site and call somebody else, which is really my least favorite thing to do, because then I'm throwing good money after bad. But it is what it is sometimes, unfortunately.
I think you kind of answered that question. If you find a directory that has where people have ability to rate vendors, since you created your own blacklist, I should say, right? I see that Wes has his hand up, and Wes, I'm gonna give you the floor, and Ed, if you're still available after Wes's part, I'd like to hear your thoughts on a topic here, Wes.
Yeah, something Noah just mentioned brought to mind one of the things I did very early on in my tenure with GMH was establish an MSA with two remediation recovery partners, because I found that we didn't have any portfolio-wide relationship. Each property was kind of using their own, whether it was a local guy or a serve pro or whoever. And my time with resorts, I was a corporate director of engineering at one of the Omni resorts. And Omni had done this across all their resorts. They had established a relationship with one vendor and said, unless you tell the corporate boss a good reason why you're not going to use them, this is who you use, period, for all your disaster recovery. And I found that the hodgepodge that we had really didn't work. The service standards were different at each property, and they didn't really know what to expect. So I went through about a 6-month vetting process with a number of different nationwide, disaster recovery, remediation companies, and finally settled on two that we signed MSAs with. And now, as part of our disaster recovery SOP, those two companies' contact numbers are in there, and each one of those companies have a singular person that I talk to. So because my whole point in this was I wanted to be forward leaning in the foxhole, if you will. Their local reps visit the properties on at least an annual basis. So they know what they're dealing with at that property. They know what type of structure it is. They know where they need to park. All of those things are handled in advance, so that when that 2:00 in the morning call comes in and a sprinkler line is busted and flooded 16 units and it's rushing out the door into the street, when we call one of our partners, they're not sending a guy with a clipboard to take a bunch of notes and then send equipment after. They're mobilizing to the site with one phone call with at least enough equipment to start the cleanup and dry down process, because it's almost always water. I mean, sometimes it's fire, but even after a fire, it's water that was used to put the fire out. So I have found that to be extremely helpful. So, and I would recommend that to anyone that doesn't have something like that in place. It's worth the effort. And it does take effort to vet, and it does take effort to get the MSAs through your legal people and have all the wording and the right and everything else. But once you've established that relationship, it's very helpful when those emergency situations. But I have found that my two partners are also helpful in me sourcing contractors for other work outside of that scope, because they have people in all these different markets that are very plugged into that community. So when a job comes up that, for Fayetteville, Arkansas to, fix a busted storefront window, my remediation partner, that's not their wheelhouse. But if I can't find somebody they'll more than likely be able to recommend somebody to me. So it's helpful on a number of fronts. So Noah mentioned that, and I just wanted to bring that up.
Oh, that's very valuable. You also sent like you also dropped a document in a chat box. Would you like to let the group know what was the document for, or what you use it for, and then if your next question, are you okay with me like sharing with the entire group?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You can share it with the entire group. What that is that's one of our SOPs. We were talking about contractors, et cetera. And one of my SOPs is the pre-job meeting agenda. And again, because it's an SOP, all the properties have this, and we expect them to use it. Now, if they have a long-standing relationship with a turn vendor that comes in every year and does their cleaning or painting or whatever, going through this isn't necessarily something that I expect. But if they've got a small project that I'm not actively managing it, we're letting the GM manage it. This will take them through kind of all the steps and questions and things that they should cover prior to a contractor coming on their property and actually doing work. It's pretty all encompassing. I'm not going to say I'm perfect, and I've written a document that covers absolutely everything, but it'll cover most all the questions. Some it's not even questions that necessarily need to be asked, but it's just a helpful document that once they've gone through and had a pre-construction meeting prior to that vendor coming on the property to do any type of work, they have a document that's been signed by them and by the contractor that they've gone over all of these items, and it can be used to hold that contractor accountable if they don't follow the instructions that have been covered in that meeting, because they sign right on the bottom, yep, we've gone over this and I understand what my expectations are.
Very helpful out there, Wes. Thank you for sharing with everyone. I'll make sure that I'll send a follow-up after the meeting email, and I'll attach the document to everybody to have it available. Mr. Ed.
I just want to agree. That's what with the last gentleman about having that contract in place for all your vendors and your on-site team to have in place, because that better protects the ownership, and that gives that exact guideline of what's needed, because we have the exact same thing over here at RV Group that I help put together and actually modify it all the time, because you always want to protect the ownership. You want the contracts to always to favor the ownership. We have it for projects under 25,000 and projects over 25,000. Also, we have contracts for our day-to-day vendors, even if it's the plumbers, remediation companies, a regular turn companies, as you want to say. So we have it's all about documentation and contracts, so that way you won't have to go back and fight with that vendor to come back and do this and do that, because it's in their contract. And also it's penalties in their contract, or delay is penalties for delays in their contract. And if there's any change orders, it should be in everybody's contract as well. Like, even you agree upon this price, if the price changes more than 8%, then what they quoted you for, they'll be responsible for any additional changes to that contract or to that agreement that you had. Don't matter how small the job is, because a lot of GCs, vendors, or how you say this, they leave certain things out so that way they can get a extra money called change order, as everybody know. Pretty sure everybody get hit with a lot of change orders. But and a lot of my contracts that's over 25,000, I put where if there's more than 4 change orders, or if the prices change more than 8%, that's on the general contractor to it's reliable for that. And also I have another clause in the contracts that I help put together where there's no vending out other other jobs. Say we're doing a renovation job. We hired Cornerstone to do our low voltage and camera system. Cornerstone turns around and vent it out to another company. Well, our contract is with Cornerstone. It's not with another company. So you might run into warranty issues now, or that vendor turns around and subbed out to another vendor. Because that happens a lot especially with new construction. But the main thing is everybody answer is been on point. It's all about communication, following up on your vendors, and just trying your best to have everything in writing. I believe having everything in documentation and letting that vendor know you are responsible for going back after your renovation to clean these units. Everything got to be detailed in contracts. That's all I have to say. Got to keep everything in writing. No buddy.
Ed, would you find any value in having like a directory somewhere, a place where you could go at new vendors and where you could find like ratings about various vendors?
Oh, I was just thinking about that. Some like Angie list will be fantastic for a multifamily list, like an Adrian's list for multifamily.
Maybe I should be starting one.
Yeah, because
give me ideas now.
Yeah, Adrian's list. For multifamily.
Ed, appreciate your take, gentlemen. Incredible, interesting conversation today. I'm going to circle back with a summary of the conversation to everybody, even those that weren't able to participate. Wes, thank you for sharing your document, your SOP. I'm going to make sure that I put it in a meeting follow-up, and I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. We're still we'll still be focusing on the issues that we try to get to from the last meeting, but it's a lot to cover, and in order to just kind of give everyone a voice and give you all some time, it's hard to go over more than one topic at once. But the goal is not really to check a list; it's just bring value for everyone that participates here. I think that's what one of the things that makes this group great, and this conversation. So I look forward to seeing you all in 2 weeks straight. So the Wednesday after 1 p.m. Eastern, as always. I hope you all have a great, amazing afternoon. And if you want to check up on previous meetings that we had, go on YouTube and search for Multifamily X Podcasts channel. Subscribe to that one. Every single meeting that we have done for 2 years that we've been doing this almost, it's in there recorded. So you have access and you could always go back and listen to the content. Okay. And this one should be up and running on our channel probably by the end of next week. Thank you all again. Have an amazing afternoon and see you in 2 weeks.